Do a quick review on 3.4. They're introducing to you a new form of the line. It's called the slope-intercept form, which it looks like this, y equals mx plus b. So this is the new form that we're going to be working with on this section. But let's just look back at the form that we have been working with prior. Remember last time we talked about the standard form, which is written as ax plus by equals c, where a and b are coefficients and c is a constant. All right. And we talked about if you were to graph this, one of the ways you did previously is you found the x and the y-intercept, and then you graphed those 2 points. Well, let's just do that real quick. Let's just find our 2 points. I'm going to take the equation. I'm going to substitute in 0 for x and solve for y. Divide both sides by 3, and I get y equals 4. So when x is 0, y is 4. Okay, so this is our y-intercept. Let's take the same equation. This time, instead of plugging in 0 for x, we're going to plug in 0 for y. And solve for x. So when y is 0, then x is 6. This is our x-intercept. And this is what you did in the last lesson. So now you had 2 points. You found the 2 points where it crosses the x and the y-axis, and you drew your line. That's how you graphed it. But let's take this equation here and watch what happens when I manipulate the equation. 2x plus 3y equals 12. And I want to convert this equation into this form right here, y equals mx plus b. So that means I want to get y by itself. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. This here becomes 0, right? And 0 plus that gives me 3y. And I want to move the 2x in front and the 12. I'm just going to switch the order here. But I still don't have it in the y equals mx plus b form because I want 1y. So I'm going to make a 1 by dividing everything by 3. And so this becomes 1y equals negative 2/3 x, and 12 goes into 3 4 times. So now this is the same equation of the line. They're talking about the same line. This line is written in the standard form. This line is written in the slope-intercept form, where it's y equals mx plus b. Okay, they're both the same equation of the line. Well, notice here, what did we say the y-intercept was when we plugged in? The y-intercept was 0, 4. So this b here, think of this as 0b, right? In this case, the b was 4. So this right here is representing the y-intercept. So when it's written in this form, you immediately can go to it and say, this is the y-intercept. And the m, here you could say m is a negative 2/3 because it's mx. Well, remember, m represents the slope. So when it's written in this form, we can real quickly, without having to plug in anything and solving, we can really look at it and say, okay, this right here is the slope of the y-intercept, and this is the slope. All I need is a point and the slope, and I can graph the line. So let's graph that line. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to graph 0, 4, right? So 0 up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, this is where it crosses this is the y-intercept, right? This is where it crosses the y-axis, 0, 4. So there's 1 point, but I got to have 2 points to graph the line. Well, if I know my slope, I can find a second point. Remember, rise over run, -2, 3. Rise over run, that's our slope. So that means if I put the negative here, rises means I'm going to be going up and down. So since it's negative, I'm going to go down 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to run to the left or the right 3. It's positive, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Here's my second point. I now have 2 points. I can graph the line. I can do that again. I can find another point. Go down 2, over 3. Here's a third point. It's on the line. What if, instead of putting the negative with the 2, what if I looked at this as 2, -3? Because remember, 2 divided by -3 is the same thing, right? It's the same equation, but this means now I'm going to go up 2, 1, 2, and to the left 3, 1, 2, 3. And you see how I end up getting all these points on the same line. And then you can graph your line. Lining up your points. And there's a graph of your line. So when it's written in this form, it's so nice because you already know the point, a y-intercept, and you know the slope, and you can find the second point that easily. So let's look at another problem. It says graph the equation. Well, notice it's in the y equals mx plus b form, right? So that means that this y-intercept is going to be 0, -3. That's a point on the line. This right here is my slope, which means m equals a -2, and I'm going to put that over 1, because remember, it's got to be written as a ratio. So I know my slope, I know my point, and now I can easily graph this that quick. So we're going to graph it. We're going to find 0, -3, 1, 2, 3. Graph our point, and we're going to use our slope. Our slope was go down 2, 1, 2, and to the right 1. I can also, doesn't matter where I put that negative, I could think of this as a +2, -1. So I could go up 2, 1, 2, to the left 1. And I have my points. I could graph. And there is my line. So I graphed it that simply. When it's in this nice little slope-intercept form, you know that this is the intercept, this is the slope. Just graph that point and then use your rise over run to find a second point. Now, here we have, this is now in a different form. This is not in the slope-intercept form, right? It's not in the y equals mx plus b form. It's in that standard form. If the coefficients of the x and y divide equally into the 6, the best way to graph this is just plug in 0 for x, solve for y, plug in 0 for y, and plug for x. Okay, that finding the x and the y intercept would be the easiest way to graph it, okay? But the directions very specifically say use the slope-intercept form. So that means I've got to rewrite this into the slope-intercept form. So that means I'm trying to get it into this form. So I've got to take this equation, because right now it's in standard form, and solve for y. So I'm going to have 2y. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And I end up with this, right? Because if I subtract 3x, this becomes 0. I subtract 3x, this becomes negative 3x plus 6. I want 1y, so I've got to divide everything by 2. This becomes y equals a negative 3/2 x. 6 goes into 2 3 times. I now have it in the y-intercept form. So that means that my y-intercept is 0, positive 3, and my slope is negative 3 over 2. I have a point, I have a slope, I can now graph my line. So let's graph this line. Don't have my x and y axis here, so let me go ahead and do that. I'm not doing very neatly at it, but I'll just do it in a quick hurry here. All right, got x, got y. All right, now we're going to graph. So I'm going to graph 0, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go down 3 and to the right 2, because remember we're talking about rise over run. So rise means we're going up and down. Run means we're going left or right. Since it's a negative, we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, and we're going to run over 2, 1, 2. Now we have our second point. That's all we needed. And we've graphed our line. So it's a nice and easy. Another type of a problem that you're going to come across in this section, it says write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. Given, they're going to give you the slope and they're going to give you the y-intercept. All right? So they're asking you to take this given information and write it in the slope-intercept form. Well, the slope is m, so I'm going to write y equals, plug in the 2/3 for the m. And remember, the b is this y-intercept. So in this case would be negative 6. I have now done what they've asked. They've asked me to write the equation of the line given this slope and given this y-intercept. So you'll also come across that in your homework as well.